Calvin Harris, Levitating by Dua Lipa, About Time by Lizzo. We're going for the disco pop sound today. I went through and created this instrumental. I'm going to play it back to you, and then I'm going to show you how I did it so you can do it too. Let's dive into Ableton and play through a bit of this track. I'm going to go through and show you each set of instruments here, and then I'm going to show you the synths last because it is the biggest and most complex part of this whole track. All right, let's go through and see how we did this. So I'm going to start at the top here with my guitars. I have these guitars looping. These guitars are from Native Instruments Kontakt. This is the electric Sunburst, and I have a few instances of it here. I first have this at the bottom. Then I'm layering that with this. Just a different voicing of the same chords, and a little extra instrumentation. And then I have this tremolo going on as well, and this is one of the key switches here to add some extra texture. This genre that has become so popular in the last year or so, disco pop, it's kind of a mix of new and old. It has that funky groove of real instruments, but then we also have synths and some electronic drums as well, and we're trying to create a really cool fusion of that. So I have some guitar, but then I accompany that with a synth bass and some synth pads, so we're kind of just adding a blend of the two. So that guitar is giving us our main melodic foundation. Then our next bit of foundation and what gives us some funky flair is this bass that I have here, and this is coming from Monark. This is an absolute beast of a synth. I would definitely recommend it if you are into that Moog sound at all. Then in the bigger sections of the track, like the choruses, this is being duplicated by this serum patch to give an extra layer of grit. And what's also happening in the choruses is that the decay times of the bass are being modulated a bit, so we get this flair between short and long, like right here. I always recommend that to add some variation into your track, just opening and closing envelopes throughout a section. And then also we're adding some chorus in the bigger sections of the track for the bass. So if I go back to the beginning of the track, this is what it starts out sounding like. And you'll definitely need headphones to hear this, but this is a chorus effect that's being added. So here in the beginning section, it doesn't have it. Then if we go over into our chorus, only other thing going on with this bass is that it's getting a high pass in the breakdown, and this helps to take away some energy to starve us of it, and then it brings it right back in for the last hook of the track. Let's hear how it does that in the bridge. All right, let's go into our drums. Now, a lot of these drums are from Splice, and especially this Oliver pack. This pack was free if you've been subscribed to Splice. It was free for the holidays, and I've gotten a lot of use out of this pack here. So I've taken a couple loops, taken a few samples from it, chopped it up, mixed it with a few other samples from my personal library, and we have a pretty cool sound here. So listen to how fat these sound. So we have foundation, we have that smacky sound, then we're also adding some dynamics with these reverse effects as well, especially in this section here. So talking about processing on these, there's not a ton going on. I am balancing them a little bit with some compression, and then I'm helping them glue together with the glue compressor here in Ableton. This is a SSL type compressor, so there's a million versions of it out here if you don't use Ableton. And then at the end of all of it, I am using a clipping plugin to shave off the peaks right at the top and help them to appear louder. Then we're also adding some shakers as well, and these come and go throughout. Then we also have just this little fill. This comes in right at the beginning of the loop in just about every section of the track. Then the one thing I want to show you about the drums is how they get filtered in the bridge of the track. So let me unsolo from the second hook into the bridge. Then drums are filtering back in. Big clap, then back into the hook. All right, let's move on. So that's pretty much the drums. Then I also want to go through this effects group real quick before we move on to some other instruments. This is what's going on the bridge here. So I had that stadium loop, and then I also have this serum patch here. This is adding some noisy ear candy, and it's actually jumping from left to right in the stereo spectrum. Then I also have this vocal effect loop that's adding a little bit of texture here. Here's what this sounds like, and this comes in and out throughout the track. If I unsolo the hook, you can just barely hear it, but it's just kind of there. But I think the thing to try to get right about this genre is adding these little textures that help it to feel snappy and in the pocket, in the groove, like a funky kind of track. And it can be a little hard to try to get right, but it's making me do some cool things that I don't do on a normal basis. All right, now diving into some synths. In the hook, we have this kind of melody layer. Now this track is, in a melodic sense, it's kind of vague. We have this chord progression going on, but it's not really telling you where to go melodically, and that's on purpose. I'm actually building this track for a singer to use. So this is a melody that is adding some accents, but it's not really driving the track one way or another. Here's what it sounds like. Now I'm going to go through and show you this massive synth stack. But before I do, I wanted to invite you to subscribe to my channel for more music production content just like this. All right, the synths group. There's a lot of cool stuff going on here. And the first thing I'm going to show you is actually this chord swell that I made from scratch. So I had this one sample that I didn't end up using because I wanted to try to do something of my own. This is what the original sample sounded like. It's still sitting in the track in the effects group, but it's not being used. It's muted. So I went and tried to do this by myself, and this is what we came out with. So I have this stack of serum layers here, and let's jump through one by one to show you each little texture that there is. So there's all those layers there, and then I resampled it here in Ableton, and this is what it sounds like when it's been bounced down. So I really recommend you try this kind of stuff in your DAW, where you take your synths, take whatever instruments you have, and resample them, just like you would dragging in from like a sample library like Splice or something like that. Here in this track, this chord swell, I only have the first half of it showing up in before the verse, and then it shows up later right before the final chorus. As you can see, for the rest of the track, it's only playing the second half of it, so it's acting like a sample, and I've just chopped it up here. Here's where it sounds right in the beginning of the track. So let's go on to this next synth layer. This is kind of the main foundational synth layer in the track, and this is what it is. We're talking Massive X. I've talked about this in another video, which I'll show right here. This is a really powerful synth that I only recently just started to understand the nitty-gritty and all the things deep down inside of it. Really great synth. Sounds amazing, little hard to use, not as visual as Serum. So here's that synth section, and I will show you my MIDI right here. And that pretty much goes throughout the entire track. It gets filtered here and there, and in the hook, it opens up like this. Pretty easy going, and the only other processing I'm doing, as with a lot of things in this track, is I'm doing a little bit of side chaining to duck it down when the kick comes through. Then I also have it being reversed right here, just to come back into the verse. So here's where this sounds in the mix. I'll go from verse 2 to hook 2. All right, let me fold these synths up and let's move on to the next synths here. So I call this the rhythm stack, and this is what's going on in the choruses of the song. And this is what's giving us kind of akin to like a guitar rhythm, like a you always hear that in disco pop tracks, in older funk tracks, anything with that kind of groovy feel. And this is how we're getting that sound with a synth. Here's what they sound like. So both of these synth presets are from Splice. They're here in Serum, and this is the first one. Kind of jumping left and right in the stereo field with an auto pan here in Ableton. And then also we have this other layer, and this is really metallic sounding. It's almost like harsh to your ears, but it sounds good in the mix. A lot going on here modulation wise in the synth. I didn't program any of that, but it sounds super cool. And this is also jumping left and right in the stereo field. And then I'm doing some EQ on it, and I'm also using LFO tool to, here, I'll show you what it sounds like without it. See how the rhythm went away. That rhythm is coming from LFO tool, and it's just chopping up and down on the volume. As I've said before in another video, you don't need LFO tool to do that effect. You could also do it here with an auto filter in Ableton, for instance. This is just a filter that has an LFO on it and allows you to jump up and down. So here's what that would sound like with auto filter instead of LFO tool. Then I'm also using a compressor to help duck down some of the transients from this synth as well. That's all I got going on here on those synths. All right, now our extra chords. These come in hook 2 and also our final hook, just as a way to keep building the track up. A lot of these pop tracks, you just kind of every 8 bars or so, you just add a new element, take them away, bring them all back in. You know, it's kind of like the pop track dynamics. And how we're doing that here is with this extra synth. Just a high-end sawtooth layer, super detuned, and it's also jumping left and right in the stereo field with auto pan. Got a lot going on left and right in this track. Then I have this extra little layer that is kind of like fluttering in and out. And it's the same synth as the one above it here, but we have an arpeggiator at a super fast rate, and it's just doing this. Just comes in every once in a while at the end of the bar. So let's hear what those sound like in the mix. Now I'm going to go through and play the entire track for you, and I want you to tell me what you think is missing from the track or what element is your favorite. And if you're a singer and you need any production on your track, I'd love to help you out because I specialize in electronic music production for solo artists just like you. Go check out my website at onechannelproductions.com and let's make your best track together here in 2023. Let me know your thoughts on this track.